Have you ever experienced a moment of mindful leadership that perhaps led to a more impactful decision or interaction? What are the essential values that guide a great leadership approach? And how can these values shape the culture of an organization? What would the impact be, not just on employees' efficiency and productivity, but also on their well being and happiness? How can each single one of us create or contribute to creating a thriving working environment where everyone is physically, psychologically, and emotionally safe? Join me after the intro for a conversation with a very special friend with whom we will answer this and many more questions. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's start. Hi, I'm Rosanna D, and this is Forgive and Thrive, a podcast where we explore what thriving in life means and how we can achieve it, irrespective of our past, current condition, and expectations that those around us or society in general may have. Let's go. Welcome to the Forgive and Thrive show. Picture this. An organization where leadership lacks awareness, a place where decisions are made in haste, and the well-being of employees is often an afterthought. The toll on morale is palpable, as the disconnect between leadership and team members becomes a chasm that stifles creativity and growth. I said picture this. The truth is, many don't need to picture this, because that's not far from their daily experience at work. The personal and professional impacts on individuals are massive, including significant levels of stress and burnout. And the impact on organizations and businesses, quite frankly, are enormous too, from resignation to loss in productivity. So today we want to discuss about the linkages between having a healthy and thriving environment at work and being happy or happier and healthier individuals in and out of the office, and understand what role the leadership has to have to promote a positive organizational culture for all, create a workplace where individuals thrive, teams flourish, and success becomes a shared journey. And we dive into this fascinating topic in a conversation with today's guest, Michele Phillips. Michele is the founder of Key Performance, an author and expert in increasing happiness and individual performance in the workplace. She specializes in using the latest findings in neuroscience, habits, and positive psychology to share the formula for happiness and success in an engaging and enthusiastic manner. She is the author of Happiness is a Habit, Simple Daily Rituals that Increase Energy, Improve Well-being, and add joy to every day. It was cited in the top 5 most popular self-help books on Amazon in August 2017. Hi, Michele. Welcome to the Forgive and Thrive show. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to be here, Rosanna. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Well, Michele, I'm really excited to talk about this topic. We were mentioning just before starting, I burn out at work. And some of the decisions that the leadership has taken in my case were really great. So I really would like to learn a little bit more about this topic, what conscious leadership really is and how it should look like. But before we go there, I would like to start with you, if you don't mind. And in particular, in talking about your journey into coaching and specializing in this topic.
Yeah, thank you, Rosanna. I've been doing this 25 years, so it's a long journey. I will give you the short version. How I got into this field was I was doing sales at the #1 wireless company here in the United States. And after doing sales for many years, I got into doing sales training. And when I got into the sales training end of it, I discovered psychology of sales, which just excited me. It like jingled all my bells. And I just was like, wow, what makes people do what they do? Which led me to go back to Fordham University, where I got my master's in organizational development and behavior in corporations, which literally while I was in that class, someone hired me to give a workshop at their company and my career was born. So this was in, my gosh, 1997. I've been doing it since, but it's been such a fulfilling career because, as you say, a lot of us, sometimes we have bad bosses and leaders that aren't doing the right thing. But the biggest thing I've learned is most people are doing the best they can they've just never been giving the tools or the training, which is where I come in because there's things out there, there's tools, there's classes. Emotional intelligence can be learned. Leadership can be learned. So that's what's so exciting about where we are, because you could listen to a podcast like this and get a lot of tips just from something simple as that. You don't have to go back for a college degree.
Absolutely. And I love what you're saying because I agree. Leadership is a skill, and a skill can be learned. It's not a talent that someone has to be born with. So again, I'm even more excited to go into the conversation, to dive into that. So fantastic. So let's start, for example, with some of the most common challenges that today's leaders have to face, because we live in a very fast-paced, ultra-connected world. And the challenges that today organizations and businesses have to face are probably much tougher than what they had 20, 30 years ago. So what is the current landscape and what are these challenges that we need to be aware of?
You're hitting on so many things that are so important. The definition of a leader is someone, like, leadership involves other people. So the biggest thing is realizing that these leaders have a full plate of work already. So they've got this full plate of work. They've got probably emails and meetings, and now they have a team. And to be a leader is to have to take the time to develop a team. So one of the biggest challenges I find leaders face is they don't have time to develop people. They don't have time to, some companies don't even give performance evaluations and, that kind of thing. So time is of the essence. And then I believe in this current landscape is the anxiety, where maybe, when I started my career, I was taught, leave your emotions in the car and just come do your work. Where today's employee wants to bring their, you have to bring your emotions with you, right? The emotional intelligence studies tell us we have 27 emotions an hour, each of us. So you can't leave your emotions in the car. And now a leader is helping people navigate anxiety, navigating emotions. So again, it's a big shoe to fill, but the conscious leadership that we're talking about is when a leader can really connect their head to their heart. They're authentic, they're genuine. People know they care. And when you're authentic, you don't have to be perfect and you don't have to have all the answers.
Hmm. Already in these few words, there is so much to unpack. And you started talking about development of people that leaders have in their charge. What about the development of leaders? Because it's a skill, as we said before, we need to learn how to lead others, right? And sometimes we enter in management, so not really perhaps leadership, without much training, without understanding what that entitles to, and perhaps with some misconception of what the role could be and what the job really is. What are your thoughts about it?
It's so true. I mean, leadership is more than a raise and a title. It's like getting a puppy, right? It's the puppy that stays, right? It's a lifetime commitment. So it's really, to me, a conscious leader is someone who knows they need to keep getting training. One of the statistics from McKinsey says that 60% of new managers fail in the first 2 years. And I'll never forget, years ago, I got to be in a small room of about 50 people with Colin Powell, who's one of our great American leaders. And somebody asked him the age-old question, are leaders made or born? And he said, I had a propensity, I liked working with people, but the military gave me training. I went to classes, I educated myself, I read books, right? So it's each leader has to realize that with this comes, what's that other great quote, comes great responsibility. So I always ask my leaders, are you happy with your results and how are you feeling? And then what are you doing? If you want your business to grow 15%, you have to grow 15%. Your people have to grow 15%. So it's, having that openness. And I work with such fabulous leaders. I work with heads of companies that really are conscious. They really care about their people. They get it, and they're willing to invest in themselves, in their own growth, and in the growth of their people. So that's really right there in a nutshell.
I love what you're saying. So let's take the discussion a little bit one step backward. Let's start with recognizing a leadership that is poor and can have consequences, not just on the organization, but on its culture and individual people. So what would you say are the signs that we really need to pay attention to?
Some of the signs, Rosanna, of poor leadership are the disengagement we're seeing, right? The studies show 77% of people quit and stay. That's a really high in the United States, right? So you're coming to work or you're signed into your computer, but you're not engaged. In fact, during COVID, I learned this, I can't remember what it was called. One of the highest selling gadgets on Amazon was like this jiggler. And I was like, what is that? It's like it was a mouse jiggler that you bought. So it moved your mouse so it would look like you were working, but you weren't. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is what it's come to. So again, when you are engaged and you feel connected to your leader, you want to do a good job for them. I look back at the leaders I've had over the years, and the ones that really took an interest in me, listened, motivated me, right? Told me, I saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. Those I would go through fire for them. So it's a lot of the times, we just keep thinking we're going to grind people to, do it faster, do it better. But again, then people are smart. They know what they need to do to get their paycheck and go home. You're not getting the best. And the other statistics I took notes of earlier were so that say 77% of employees are unengaged. 52% of employees who left the company said the company could have done something to get them to stay. Right. So there's hope here. And that's, people want to do a good job. We want to work. The word team spirit, I love that. It's like spirit. It's like this thing you can't wrap your arms around, but when you feel it. We want to be a part of something bigger than us. So again, that conscious decision to link your head to your heart. A true leader, a disengaged leader, is just making decisions from the neck up with their head. An engaged leader is able to make difficult decisions in a kind way because they connect their head to their heart.
That, to be honest, hits home so badly because when I burn out at work, a lot of things went wrong. But at least in the last couple of years, I've been trying to sit with the organization around the table and say, okay, I analyzed a lot of the situation, trying to be less emotional about some of the stuff, obviously, because they affected me. But let's discuss about these things. Let's see if we can improve and we can find gaps. And I'm not winning yet. So before going on a sick leave, before having this burnout, I thought that actually they weren't that bad. Now that I'm on the other side and I see how resistant they are in wanting to make a change, I started to rethink the whole situation, right? So what really has to happen in a manager to step up and become a leader? So how do you listen? How do you really look at the situation for what it is with honesty and take responsibility for the good, the bad, and the ugly?
Yeah, to me, it's a decision they have to come to, right? It's unfortunate. It's the old, you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make them drink. But if you're a bad leader and your employees are leaving and you're not getting the result, or whatever it is, it's, someone, I think what I find in my career as a coach, people have to be willing to have the tough conversations with the leaders who aren't making the cut. Doesn't make them a bad person. It doesn't make them bad at whatever their specialty is. They're probably brilliant when it comes to what they need, their specialty. But when it comes to leading people, they have to face the fact that we all could use some help and training and learning. And if they can't, or they don't want that, there's a saying, no brilliant jerks allowed, right? It doesn't matter how brilliant you are if you're not treating people well, if you're not, so it really has to be I find a lot of times, sometimes I get clients that the managers didn't have the guts to tell them. So they hire me to tell them, oh, so and so's not doing this. And I'm like, well, have you told them? Oh, no. Right. So we each have to get better at having these difficult conversations and being able to disassociate the person from the behavior. Because again, most people want to do the right thing. They just don't know how, or they've never been told they're doing the wrong thing. And you hit on something earlier, Vasana, which I thought is so interesting. Many companies you've had bad models. In the United States, I can speak for us, we are built on the command control model of leadership. There's a few people at the top who tell you what to do, and they command the people down to do that. That worked in the industrial age, but it doesn't work now. But yet, some companies have not caught up to we need every single person to be thinking, to be emotionally intelligent, to be making decisions. So some companies are far ahead and doing great things with this, and some aren't. So again, such a big topic. And like you said, so much to unpack. But the biggest thing is if someone's in your organization that is, you see needs coaching or could use, it's offering it to them. And to me, if they don't take it, that's a sign as well, right? Maybe they shouldn't be in leadership, right? Just because they have a position, then you have a role to fulfill, right? And again, leadership involves other people. It's not sit in your office and crank out stuff on your computer all day long.
Absolutely. So you mentioned emotional intelligence a number of times, a couple of times. What are really the values and qualities that a conscious leader really have to cultivate?
Well, yeah, it's self-awareness is your first right part of emotional intelligence. And people expect to manage other people when they can't even manage themselves. So I asked, can you manage your emotions? An emotion is not good or bad. It's an electromagnetic unit of energy. And when something happens that you don't want, you have to be able to manage your nervous system. I've heard crazy stories about people yelling at each other and, just things that get out of hand. And then this damages relationships, which again, forgive and thrive, you have to forgive in the end, but not everybody's at that point yet. So managing your own emotions and then the social awareness of how are you coming across to others. Well, if I'm coaching someone who's low on the emotional intelligence scale, I give them the exercise to like read the other, like when you're talking, like I'm speaking to you, read the person's face. What are their nonverbals saying? Are they engaged with you? Are they not engaged? Or, you could tell. So it's sometimes leaders are so busy just giving their message, they're not reading their audience and getting the feedback loop. So that's where emotional intelligence, social awareness, all these skills come in, and they're all buildable skills. I had one leader recently who was such a big extrovert and a big personality. And he would say to me, nobody on my team talks at meetings. And I go in there and I'm like, give me your ideas and tell me what you want. And they all just look at me. And what we found was he had a lot of introverts, what we call quiet geniuses on his team. And his personality was overriding them. And he was never giving enough time for them to formulate their thoughts, interject. So now he runs his meeting, giving them the agenda ahead of time, telling them things he wants them to talk about so they can come prepared just because, so here's a leader who is like, let me look at how I could do it better. Those are the ones you want. And he's working on it.
Is the kind of person that understands who is in front of them, essentially. So they really see the other person and really understand how they operate as individuals, which is absolutely beautiful. What role do you think feedback and self-reflection can play in enhancing that sense of self-awareness for a leader?
Yeah, I think it's, one of the things I do with my clients is I do live 360 feedback reports where you would give me 5 to 7 people and I interview them on the phone live. I like doing the live 360s because I can ask for clarification, I can ask for examples, I could get deeper because I really want to give the person quality feedback on how they're perceived. What's so beautiful about the process is nobody's ever surprised with their results, right? And people are so kind. Your colleagues want you to do well, right? They might say that, you give away your power too much or you don't talk up and speak up at meetings, but they say it because they want to help you, not because they want to hurt you. And I find this a very valuable tool again for leaders. And what I look for is themes. If one person says, "Oh, they never talk up at meetings," but if that's their opinion, but if five people say it, then it's a theme. So everyone will have their opinion, and my job is to weed through the opinions and find the themes. And then I work with the client. Okay, these are the things we're going to work on. Maybe they don't speak as confidently as they could at a meeting, or there's a host of things we work on. But I find the 360 feedback is great. And then the other thing I give them is I give them worksheets to fill it on themselves. What do you think? How do you think you're doing? And we get a snapshot. Usually people are harder on themselves than others, but it's again, feedback is something you have to be discerning about. And if someone said to me, "Michelle, you're too energetic, you're too much," and I'm like, that's kind of who I am, right? So but I know I'm emotionally intelligent enough to know that when I'm in a meeting with some serious things, like I'm going to tone down my energy and I'm going to speak slower. So it's knowing where the feedback fits in your personality as well.
Mm. So reading the room, basically, where you are and making sure that your behavior matches the temperature in the room, if you like. Oh, I love that. There is one of the things that was coming to my mind, listen to you, and is that sometimes we tend to pay a lot of attention to the individual results. And for example, productivity when it comes to an organization or business. And we focus more on that aspect rather than on the people skill, or sometimes people tend to call them soft skills. I don't really like that expression. And perhaps sometimes there is a tendency of giving more weight to the ability of someone to deliver than to their ability to interact with others. What is your experience and as a coach, and what would you say to a situation like that, where people or employees that might have a behavior that is not really the best and can really affect others? I wouldn't really push it to become bully, but they could, or even harass others. But they are extremely capable. They are extremely good at what they do. Where a conscious leader has to stand there.
Yeah, that's a very tricky question, and it's a case by case. It goes back to what I said before, no brilliant jerks allowed. We allow people to stay in roles because maybe they're getting the results, but they're leaving a trail of bodies in the behind them. So again, a conscious leader does not do that, right? A conscious leader is connected, and so that's a difference. And the other thing I tell people is the responsibility is on the employer and the leader, but it's also on the employee. If you made a bad career decision or you end up with a bad boss, you have choices. I've talked to people that I've been in this bad position for 20 years. I'm like, that's your fault. Right. So if you're in it, and I've had to change bosses during my career, I've had bosses change on me, not by my choice. Some were better fits than others, but if the boss is in a fit, instead of trying to jam yourself into this misery, if you're educated, if you keep your skills up, if you're confident, there's always, start looking, right? Look for another position in the company, look for another company. It's like really, I always say to people, there's no chains on our feet, right? We live in a free society. And I know it's easier said than done. People can't just get up and quit their jobs. But the other thing I recommend is I tell my clients once a year, I want you to go interview someplace when you don't need a job. Go see what you're worth. Go on a practice interview. The best time to interview is when you don't need a job, right? So you go out there, you have nothing to lose, you meet some new contacts, and you might say, wow, I'm worth more at this company than where I am, or you don't know. So it's really empowering yourself to make choices.
I absolutely love that because obviously in that situation there is no pressure. The reality of the situation is that very often we don't do it and we don't exercise that possibility. And we tend to look for a new job when the situation has become too critical for us
Yeah.
to stay where we are, right? And having burnout a few years ago, one of the aspect that really makes my life tricky is the sense of safety because I was bullied in from a number of people. It wasn't personal. I always said that. I always recognized that it wasn't towards me, but towards what I represented at that particular time. And that sense of safety, psychological, emotional safety, is obviously important for everybody. Also, there are indications that people that feel safe are happier, healthier. They work better. They produce more. First, would you agree with that? And what can we do to make people feel safe? Because I agree with you, changing job, but when you change with a bad experience, you
Right.
tend to go, you are on a hyper vigilant sort of situation, right? So you tend to go in a new place and possibly do something to recreate those situations or misunderstand some of the little signs that might mean absolutely nothing, but for you are important because remind you they are triggers. So from a safety point of view, being someone who has burnout, I would prefer to heal with the organization. So heal from a personal perspective while the organization is taking steps to recognize their side of responsibility and making sure that these kind of things don't happen again in the future.
Yeah.
Am I dreaming?
No, the biggest thing is personal responsibility, right? By you saying, like, I like what you said before. You said, it wasn't personal. And that's something realizing that everyone, people do make, I've made bad decisions. I've said things I shouldn't have said. I probably, but people think they're doing the right thing at the time, or they think they're making the right decision. So it's the personal responsibility that I'm choosing to work on myself. I'm choosing to see this person in another light because we all have work to do, right? And, being as a leader, I think how do you create a safe environment is as a leader, I always tell my leaders I want them to be selectively vulnerable. I use the word selective vulnerability, meaning, don't lay down and show all your fears, but you want your people to know you're human, you're genuine. So you show a piece of yourself. You also have social sensitivity. You're sensitive to people that aren't like you, people that look different or act different or think different. We all are different. So that social sensitivity and to ask your team, what do you want? Ask them for ideas, engage them, and then do something with the information they give you is really important. So again, these are again really big topics. But to me, if I look, let's say I'm in a boss that's abusing me or verbally, putting me down, it's again, it's not a situation I want to be in, but I have to take responsibility that I know I'm a good person. Like at the end of the day, I have to work on my confidence and my self-esteem to know that this is a person who's evidently wounded or they wouldn't be doing this to me, right? And then what are my choices, right? To build myself up. And then the other thing I found works really well too is having these courageous conversations with your boss one-on-one. And people don't do this a lot, but it's in a very non-challenging way. Hey, Mr. Boss, I don't know what your name is. I don't know. I can only tell you my experience, but sometimes at meetings, it feels to me like you're calling me out. And I don't know if this is done on purpose or it's just my perception, but I want us to have a better working relationship. If you have something you don't like about a report I did, can you, email it to me? Or, really having these tough conversations. A lot of times when I find when people have these conversations, even if the boss does know, they're like, oh, I didn't know, or I'll try to get better. And, but really being sensitive and asking for what you want in a sensitive manner. If you don't get the result, then that's a different story. But at least taking that avenue and trying to connect. I want to do a good job. I want to work with you, but here's where I'm struggling, or here's how I'm viewing things.
I love that. Is taking the ownership of your story and to some extent talk your truth.
Years ago, I had a boss when I was very young in my career. I felt he gave the men the better assignments and he gave me like the fluffy stuff. So I said to him, I said, I don't know if you realize, I said, Joe and Scott get the good, assignments and you tell me to, arrange the party and get the carpet cleaned or whatever he was telling me to do. And he was like, I didn't know. And, and he changed, whether he knew it or not, having the confidence to confront things early before, like you said, it gets unbearable.
Yeah. Michelle, we mentioned before being happier and obviously healthier. And you wrote a book about happiness. Happiness is a habit. And I love the title already to start with. How can each individual create happiness in the workplace when the conditions aren't really great? Because, for example, of poor leadership, or there are behaviors like I mentioned before, the bullying, harassment, and things like that. Or in other words, how can they stay resilient first and foremost?
Yeah, the biggest thing I want people to know is you always have more power than you think. When you say things like to me, I immediately think of that movie, Life is Beautiful, when that gentleman's living with his son at the concentration camp, right? And they make a game of it. And I think, oh my gosh, if that guy can figure something out, I could figure something out in my workplace. So my book is Happiness is a Habit, and it's basically says that happier people do things for themselves mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally on a regular basis. So what are their habits? Physically, are they taking care of their bodies? Spiritually, are they connected to something greater than themselves? Emotionally, what is their relationship with others, but what's their relationship with themselves? And then mentally, how are they processing events? The way you think is a habit. So there's that old joke that they used to say that they send the two salesmen to the islands, and the one salesman calls the boss to their shoe salesman, and the one salesman calls the boss and says, "Oh, we don't have any customers here. Nobody wears shoes." But the second salesman calls back. He goes, "Oh my gosh, we hit pay dirt. Nobody here wears shoes." Right. So I think in the workplace, it's you have to take care of yourself. You don't wait for the workplace to change for you to change. That's the biggest advice I could give people because there's always going to be bad bosses. There's always going to be negative things happening. There's always going to be pessimists. But if I can really take care of myself mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, I can take control of my calendar. That's a big one. Don't let everybody take control of my calendar and make sure I have room to breathe. I have room to do my work. And I can manage my relationship with my boss, even if I don't like them. I don't want to have them over for dinner, but I can at least make it palpable, right? So it's really not waiting for other people to change, but you learning. Years ago, I bought a book called How to Manage Your Boss. I always remember that book because I needed to learn, right? I needed to learn how to take control and keep my power, stay empowered.
Absolutely love that. And you mentioned emotions here, and especially when the situation at work is not really conducive of happiness and health, we can develop a number of emotions that can become over time a little bit disempowering, anger, resentment, and all these kind of things. What is your recipe or suggestion or advice to let go of these emotions that are disempowering and in line with the forgive and thrive is
Yeah.
given us.
Biggest thing, and I think this goes right in line with your mission is to stop focusing on things you don't control. I mean, it's such a big, we spend our, people, I laugh, someone said to me, I can't even control my kids and people want to control the country, it's like, so it's when I look at things, it's the old serenity prayer, right? God grant me the serenity to change the things I can, accept the things I can't, and the courage to know the difference.
Mm.
And if most of us during, or I call it my sacred isolation during our, COVID times, when things got so crazy, I said to myself, Michelle, I have to go back to fundamentals. I have to stop giving my attention to things I don't control. And when you do that, your anxiety goes down. I felt better in control. And again, at the end of the day, we don't really have control. We only control ourselves, how we process our emotions, what we think. And again, but the better you get at this, the better influence you have over others. And then you find you don't attract the negative people as much because you're too happy or things are going so well for you. And then that's the other thing at work I say is the survival is to surround yourself with not the people that are complaining and talking about how bad it is, because that just makes you all feel worse. Who are the people that are managing it, that are doing okay, that are finding the joy in the misery or whatever? Those are the ones I want to be spending more time with because those are the ones that will help me focus in the direction I want to go in.
I love that. Is there any final advice that you would give to leaders and those who are not in a leadership role to promote to their leaders?
Yeah, I think it's what you hit on before about you always have more power than you think, but really, let's look at feedback. Ask people. We had a mayor in New York City many years ago, Mayor Koch, and he used to run around the city and he would, everywhere he went, he was like, how am I doing? How am I doing? Do you have any advice for me? How am I doing? And we used to laugh at him, but more leaders have to ask that. How am I doing? How am I doing? What can I be doing better? Am I giving you the support you need? And then really listening, constantly asking people for advice on how you could be better and being open to doing something different.
That is so interesting because very often in organizations and businesses we have a sort of assessment of how we are and what we are doing, which is sort of top down and not the other way around. So the bottom part of the organigram hardly gives any feedback about the leaders. So I think you nailed it here. You need to have this double feedback in
Yeah.
the organization. So very, very nice. Misha, coming back on you, is there anything specific that you are working on? We are at the beginning of new year. Is there anything planned for 2024 that you want to
Yes, I have
discuss?
two. Thank you for asking. I have two fun projects. I made a series of videos based on my book, Happiness is a Habit. They're a series of training videos with a training workbook with exercises that will probably be coming out in the next 30 days. And it's available to purchase, and anybody can go. It's for organizations, but people can purchase them one-offs. And I also am working on my new book called Energize Your Life, a personal guide to aligning your energy. And again, fingers crossed that'll be out in the next 90 days as well. I don't know when this podcast will air. Probably by the time it airs, it'll be out. So if people want to follow me on Instagram, it's at Key Performance. My website's a little tricky, but I'll give it to you. It's key2unlock.com. Hopefully you'll put it in the show notes. It's KEY, the number two, UNLOCK.com. And most all my information is there.
Fantastic. Yes, absolutely. We will put all the links in the description of today's episode, so everyone will just find your link and you on the other side. Michelle, very final question. If there was one take-home message that you would love everybody to remember from this conversation, what that would be?
You are the power. You have the power, and you can, you don't have to take it, but you own it. Own that you are valuable and that you are worthy and that you deserve to be living a beautiful life with a boss that, thinks the world of you. And you have such thoughtful questions. So thank you so much. This has been so fun for me.
Thank you. Well, as we wrap up this illuminating journey into conscious leadership, it's clear that the stakes are high when it comes to the impact of leadership on individuals and organizations. The consequences of poor leadership ripple through the very soul of our workplace, affecting the well-being of employees and the overall productivity of teams. That said, the transformation can start from each single one of us, as we just learned, even if not exactly sitting on the driving seat. And it starts with us. By embracing the principles of conscious leadership, we have the power to create a workplace where individuals flourish, teams synergize, and success becomes not just a destination, but a shared and sustainable journey. And with this in mind, I want to leave you with a quote from one of my favorites, Simon Sinek, who said, "Leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in our charge."
I love that.
Beautiful, isn't it? Misha, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and for sharing so much about what you do, your story, and your positive message. I love your energy.
Thank you. It works. So that's why I love to share it, because I've been practicing it and using it. And just thank you so much for your thoughtful questions, and the work that you're doing with this podcast is wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, we would love to know what you think about this topic. Are you in a leadership role? If so, what's your leadership style? Does it need any refinement? If that's the case, I'm sure you can find today's conversation with Michelle very inspiring. And if you are not in a leadership position, I hope that you have found today's episode inspiring too, especially if you are experiencing poor management. Know that sometimes it takes one person to trigger significant changes. Could it be you, that person? Let us know. And if you need more inspiration, don't forget to check Michelle's website, her work, and to follow her on social media. You will find all the links in the description of today's episode. Join me next time when we will continue exploring inspiring and challenging situations. Because remember, we are together in this journey. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this content, subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to hit the notification bell and like this video. See you in the next one.